Hi there, Doug Goldstein with the Goldstein On Gelt Show. I'd like to tell you about a conversation that I have with people sometimes, which quite frankly really kind of annoys me. I always start when I meet with new clients in my financial advisory practice, right? We work in Israel with people who have US investment accounts. I ask them to tell me about what their goals are. And it doesn't happen a lot, but sometimes people come to me and they say, Doug, I want to make 20% a year, or I want $100 million, and they don't have anywhere near that. Why does it annoy me? Because they're just throwing out numbers. They're being so affected by the greed culture that people have, and they think that my job is to just make them richer and richer and richer. And quite frankly, that's not my job. I don't see that as what I should be doing. I'm not interested in setting up a casino and having people gamble because, if you're trying to make so much money on your portfolio, if you're just trying to maximize the amount of return you get, you know what that means? That means you're going to be maximizing the amount of risk that you take on. Most people I meet with who are usually 50, 60, 70, 80, 90 years old, they're not in a position and they don't even want that kind of risk. They're hearing people talk about it. When people come to my office and they say, well, my neighbor told me, or I was sitting in shul, I was sitting there in synagogue and someone gave me this hot stock tip, what do I do with it? Right? The answer is you should just ignore it. That's not the way that you deal with investments. And so we often talk about goals. I'm a big goal proponent. I ask people, really, what are you looking for? Don't just tell me something about huge returns or unrealistic investments that you heard someone once did by investing in aloe trees in the Far East. I'm not interested in that. I'm interested in people who are able to and looking to think about their future and then develop the plan to get there, right? Because if you don't have any plan, if you don't know where you're going, any road will get you there. You need to have a specific plan based on a specific set of goals. But now what I'm going to tell you is something even above that. And it's something that came up recently at the networking group that I run. I run a group in my office complex here, the office place where we live, where we work. We're here a lot. I guess it feels like we live here. The office center where we work is called Lulim. So for those of you who speak Hebrew, you're thinking, wait a second, Lulim, that's a very funny name. A lul in Hebrew, a moment of Hebrew lesson, a lul, like L-U-L, is a chicken coop. And the plural would be lulim, chicken coops. So we actually do work in chicken coops, but they have happily been completely refurbished, and now it's a huge office center with lawyers and accountants and financial people and high tech. It's very cool. I hope one day you'll get to see us here. Anyway, sorry, I got to tell you one more thing about this, which is that the lulim, the owners of them realized there's probably a lot more potential in running a business center than in raising chickens. So they decided to convert this whole area into a pretty serious business center, which is why we're here. Anyway, that's an aside. So I run the networking group here. A networking group is, it could be many things, but the one that I run is for the business owners and the business people here to come together and to work with each other and to help each other in terms of building their business. Most businesses, especially advisory businesses like mine and the other people I meet, they're built by referrals. And the only way you can refer someone is if you kind of get to know them. So that's why we have these networking groups. So I invited a man named Yoav Bowman, who's a lawyer, and he's also involved in a group called Aseret. So again, another Hebrew lesson. Aseret comes from the word eser, and the term that we offer, eser, which means 10, the number 10. So Eser Hadibrot is the 10 commandments. So there's an organization called Aseret, and it's all about bringing people together to talk, right? Because for those of you who haven't noticed, there's very little talking these days in the world, whether it's for political or emotional reasons. Most people are yelling at each other or demonstrating in the streets and calling each other criminals. It's really a nightmare. And again, another Hebrew term. It's what we would call sinat chinam, baseless hatred. And we're seeing more and more of that every day, everywhere in the world, sadly, including in Israel. So the idea of this organization is to bring people together to talk. Why am I talking to you about this? Because it's important. We're going to talk a little bit about communications, which is really the core of good investing. Anyway, so Yoav Bowman stands up in front of the group and he He asks all of the business people there, he says, tell me which of the 10 commandments, which of the values of the 10 commandments speaks most to you as a business owner? This is like a bizarre question. First of all, whoever thinks about the 10 commandments, it seems so passé. I mean, they're all nice, right? We know a few of them, and some people even know all of them, but it's kind of hard to relate to them. So he gave us before he started, he handed out a little card with all of the 10 commandments. And in fact, if you want to get one, if you contact me at goldsteinongelt.com and you ask for one of these Aseret cards, I'll ask him if maybe he can send it out to you. I think you'll really like it. Anyway, so I went through them. Just like ever, he said, take a few minutes, read each of the 10 commandments, and there was a brief explanation. And again, the reason I'm telling you this is because I want to share something with you about my business. Most people look at me and they say, hey, you're that financial guy, right? You give advice to people on investing. And I say, yeah, but I want to share what the value is. So after going through all of them, trying to pinpoint the one that I thought was most relevant to my situation and my company was a little bit difficult. So I said, what is profile investments all about? And I'll tell you the one I chose, number 4. You know what number 4 is of the 10 commandments? Remember the Sabbath and keep it holy. So why is remembering the Sabbath so important for a financial advisory firm? And I think that you have to look a little deeper into it. And don't worry, I won't spend hours and hours today talking to you about all of the different commentaries on just each word of that commandment. But the idea is that I'm going to allot time, right? What is the Sabbath all about, right? Shabbat all about. It means I'm going to allot time for myself, for my family, to help myself grow, right? That's really for people who are Sabbath observers. That's what it's all about. A lot of times when I speak to people who are not, a lot of times I'm talking to people in America and they say, oh, I'll call you on Friday. And I said, no, you can't call me on Friday because we don't take calls on Friday night here. And they go, what do you mean? I say, oh, my cell phone is off and that's the end of it. We're done with business. I'm just with my family. And I can see frequently they say, wow, I wish I could do that too. So what I realize is, and now I want to explain why I told everyone this reflects my business. Because the fact is, when I work with people on their portfolios, I work with people who live in Israel who have US investment portfolios, stocks, bonds, index funds, and bank deposits, that kind of thing. So I work with them on that. And some of them, a small percentage, some of them really like talking about the stock market. And I like talking about it too. They like analyzing the companies, the bonds, what's going on in the economy. But most of the people I work with don't want to deal with the day-to-day operations. They just want to relax. They want every day of dealing with their portfolio to be like Shabbat. They want to have what I have with my family. They want to allot time for their peace of mind, for their rest, for their body and their soul. They don't want to be dealing with all the details of money. They don't want to worry about it. So I think that the commandment to remember the Sabbath and keep it holy is a core value of profile investments. We're just trying to apply that to other people. We're trying to help other people get that value in their life as it relates to their money, because absolutely, and maybe you can attest to this as well, if you had less stress about money, do you think you'd feel a little bit better? You think you would rest a little bit better? You think you would feel better about yourself? You'd be able to spend more time with your family and friends. You'd be able to stop focusing on the material growth in life, which, quite frankly, at the end of the day, they say you can't take it with you. I have lots of proof of that. Unfortunately, lots of the clients that I work with, when they die, and because they're older, a lot of them, they move on. They've never, ever taken their assets out of their brokerage account in America and taken it with them to heaven. Never happened, right? You can't take it with you. What's important is what happens to you here. And I feel that our job at Profile, our value, which I saw from this talk that Yoav Bowman gave at the Lulim networking group, which I run, when he brought in this Aseret concept, our value came from Shabbat. So what I'd like to suggest as we're wrapping up today's show, take a minute, look at the 10 commandments. Now, you might have a different one. I think you would. Each person has something that applies to him. And don't just look at the key words that are in it. Look at what's behind it, right? Let's say that you open up your Bible and you find, thou shalt not covet, right? Don't covet. What does that really mean? What is that? Okay, you say I'm not coveting my neighbor's wife or his donkey, right? And you say, well, that doesn't apply to me. Yeah, I think it does apply. I mean, I hope you're not coveting your friend's wife or his donkey or anything. Of course, I'd be interested to know if your friend actually had a donkey. But I think what it means, I think the core value, and one of the things that we discussed with the Aseret group is that I'm going to be happy with what I have. I'm going to be happy with my lot in life. Now, people often come to financial advisors because they're a little concerned about what they have. But it's not because it shouldn't be because they're unhappy. I think no matter what you have to find the happiness in that. The technical aspects of investing that money, fine, leave that to someone like me. Find an investment guy, talk to him about it, let him deal with it. But if you're generally unhappy, if your value is not to be happy with your lot, you're never going to be a good investor. I'll give you an example of what I tell people all the time. When people buy bonds, right? So let's say they buy a bond or they put money into a bank deposit. And we get them a bank deposit that's yielding 5.5%, which in the current market is pretty good. So they say, wow, that's really good. I always stress to people, listen, you're buying this bank deposit. You're going to lock the money up for 3 months or 6 months or a year, whatever period, that's in the market that day. I let them know that interest rates might go up, right? And then you're going to talk to your neighbor and, a year later, a few months later and say, oh, I've got a CD, a certificate of deposit that's paying me 5.5%. And he's going to say, well, I've got one that's paying me 6%. Remember those words, thou shalt not covet. Be happy with your lot. Don't worry about what's going on with someone else. By the way, I'm not saying this in jest. I think this is truly important. I think that people really need to be careful. All the time, I get folks who call me and they say, Doug, we're managing the money this way, but I heard about this stock or I heard about this fund. Why don't we buy that? I think that's a form of coveting. I think that's a form of saying, wait a second, I could be doing better. I could have more. I want more. I want more for me. Yeah, take it easy a little bit. Make sure that, first of all, you're happy with your lot in life. Then develop a financial plan that's going to get you where you want to go. And then relax and go back to the Shabbat mode, right? So we spoke about keeping Shabbat. We spoke about not coveting. I'll give you one more, and then we're going to wrap up. How about the idea of honoring your parents, right? It says honor your father and your mother. Very important. That's one of my favorites. Certainly, I like to talk about that a lot with my kids, and I think they're talking about it with their kids. But what does that mean? So I think one of the things it means is that clearly I'm going to give weight. I'm going to give, when my parents tell me something, it's going to mean something to me because I'm going to honor them. I'm going to respect them. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean, doesn't have to mean at all that you're going to follow what they say, right? Because a lot of times, and sadly this is true, a lot of times parents are not so good at finances. So the kids come to me and say, boy, my parents are a mess. And they recommend that I do this, that, or the other. Doug, what do you think? So honoring them means listening to them. It means taking the time to understand what they have to say. Doesn't mean blindly following, but it is your responsibility to actually honor what they say. And I think that applies, you can spread that out further. First of all, listen to your parents, listen to your grandparents, listen to people who are older, and also listen to people who are younger, because they're going to have different ideas as well. The idea of developing the habit of honoring other people is so critical in growing yourself, and because it's a financial show, in growing your finances. The way you're going to develop your financial situation is by listening and learning, not by talking, right? We have 2 ears and 1 mouth. There's a reason for that, right? We're meant to listen. Start by practicing listening to your parents, then listen to other people. And only then, once you feel you've got the understanding and you've listened respectfully, that's a time that you can go back and begin to talk and make your own decisions for yourself. I'm not talking about being an automaton. I'm talking about being honorable and respectful to other people. Anyway, we started this conversation today by talking about choosing investments. And then I said you need to choose the goals. But above choosing goals is understanding what your values are. I learned from Yoav Bowman and his Aseret conversation how important it is for people to develop these skills in talking. I strongly advise that you look up Aseret on the internet, you find out a little bit more about it, join their conversations all over the country, in fact, all over the world that are happening, especially for students. So if you have kids in college and university here, tell them to look it up, because it's not just for religious people. It's meant for religious, not religious, people who believe in God, people who don't believe in God, people who are agnostic. It's meant for everyone. The idea is to develop the conversation, get it going. I believe, every success that people have in life with other people, which is kind of everything we do, is based on communication. This is a good tool to get started. Okay, I hope this communication has been useful for you. It's always a pleasure to see you here on the Goldstein On Gelt Show. I'm Doug Goldstein. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, anything about your own situation, feel free to get in touch with me at the Contact Us page of goldsteinongelt.com. See you next time on the financial show for Americans living in Israel.